I found my baby photos in a stranger's house across the country. The toothbrush slipped from my hand and clattered into the porcelain sink when I saw it through the bathroom doorway, my own 5-year-old face staring back at me from a silver frame on the nightstand. My legs felt like they might give out. I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at what should have been impossible. That was definitely me in the photo, gap-toothed and grinning, wearing the same purple dinosaur shirt I remembered from my childhood in Ohio. But I was standing in a stranger's Airbnb in Seattle, 2,400 miles from where that picture was taken 23 years ago. What the hell, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rain pattering against the bathroom window. I crept toward the nightstand like I was approaching a wild animal. My hand shook as I picked up the frame. The photo was pristine, professionally printed on that thick photo paper they used in the 90s. Behind my 5-year-old self stood a woman I'd never seen before, tall, auburn-haired, with my exact same nose and the same dimple in her left cheek that I'd inherited. Her hand rested on my shoulder with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. This couldn't be real. My birth mother died when I was 6 months old. Car accident. My adoptive parents, Linda and Robert Chen, had told me the story 100 times. They'd adopted me through a closed adoption after the tragic death of a young single mother who had no family. I set the frame down with trembling fingers and scanned the room with new eyes. That's when I saw them everywhere, more photos scattered across the dresser, tucked into the mirror frame, displayed on the bookshelf. Me at 7, missing my front teeth. Me at 10 in my soccer uniform. Me at 15 at what looked like a school dance, though I couldn't remember anyone taking that particular photo. My chest tightened. Someone had been watching me. Collecting pictures of me. For years. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos of everything, my heart hammering so loud I was sure the neighbors could hear it. The woman appeared in about half the pictures, always hovering at the edges, sometimes clearly visible, sometimes just a partial face in the background. In one photo from what looked like my high school graduation, she was sitting 3 rows behind my adoptive parents, a telephoto lens in her lap. The Airbnb listing had been booked under the name Margaret Sullivan. I'd chosen this particular rental because it was cheap, clean, and close to my client's office in Capitol Hill. I was supposed to be here for 3 days, presenting quarterly reports to Nordstrom's marketing team. Instead, I was standing in what felt like a shrine to my stolen childhood. My phone buzzed. A text from my adoptive mom. How's Seattle, honey? Hope your presentation goes well tomorrow. Dad and I are thinking of you. Love you. I stared at the message until the words blurred. 28 years of love yous and bedtime stories and birthday cakes. 28 years of believing my birth mother was dead, that I'd been rescued from tragedy and given a beautiful life with people who chose me. But if this Margaret Sullivan was my birth mother, and looking at those photos, at that face that was essentially my own aged up 30 years, I knew she had to be, then everything was a lie. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at Mom. My finger hovered over the call button. Then I heard footsteps on the front porch and keys jingling in the lock. The front door creaked open downstairs. I heard the rustle of grocery bags, the soft thud of shoes being kicked off, and then humming, a melody I recognized but couldn't place right away. My throat constricted when I realized it was You Are My Sunshine, the same lullaby Linda used to sing to me when I had nightmares. I shoved my phone into my pocket and frantically tried to put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The silver frame went back on the nightstand, angled precisely the way it had been. But my hands were shaking so badly I nearly knocked over a water glass. Hello? Emma? A woman's voice drifted up from downstairs, warm, with just a hint of a southern accent. I saw your rental car outside. I hope you're settling in okay. Emma. She knew my name, but that wasn't unusual for an Airbnb host. What made my blood turn to ice was how she said it, like she'd been practicing the syllables for years. Like it was precious to her. I'm fine. I called back, surprised my voice sounded even remotely normal. Just getting ready for bed. I picked up some of that lavender tea you mentioned in your booking message. I'll leave it in the kitchen for you. I hadn't mentioned lavender tea in any message. I didn't even like lavender tea. But my birth mother, because I was now certain that's who this was, apparently thought I did. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She'd been watching me, but she didn't actually know me at all. I heard her moving around downstairs, the familiar sounds of someone putting away groceries and settling in for the evening. This was her house. She lived here, in this shrine to my childhood, surrounded by stolen moments she'd never been part of. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a Facebook notification. Someone had tagged me in a photo. I opened the app and my stomach dropped. It was a picture from my coworker Jake's birthday party last month. Margaret Sullivan had liked it. Her profile picture was a sunset over Puget Sound, generic enough that I'd never given it a second glance, but now I scrolled through her sparse timeline with growing nausea. She'd liked dozens of my photos over the past 3 years. Photos of my apartment in Chicago, my vacation to Colorado, my promotion celebration dinner. She'd even commented once, beautiful smile, on a picture from my college graduation. I'd probably thanked her politely, thinking she was just another random Facebook friend I'd accumulated over the years. The humming downstairs stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Emma, honey? I made too much dinner tonight. Would you like some leftover lasagna? It's my grandmother's recipe. Honey. She'd called me honey like she had the right to, like we were family. My chest felt tight, like someone was slowly squeezing all the air from my lungs. That's really nice of you, but I already ate. I lied, backing toward the bathroom. Thank you though. Are you sure? You always loved Italian food when you were little. The words hung in the air between us like a confession. I heard her sharp intake of breath from the hallway, like she'd just realized what she'd said. When you were little. My knees buckled and I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, staring at the door. She was right outside, probably panicking, trying to figure out how to explain away what she'd just admitted. The silence stretched between us, thick with 28 years of lies and secrets and a truth that was about to destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the door, shallow and nervous. My mind raced through possibilities. I could pretend I hadn't heard her slip up, pack my things and leave for a hotel, confront her directly. But my body felt frozen, trapped between fight and flight. Emma? Her voice was smaller now, uncertain. I misspoke. I meant you look like someone who would enjoy Italian food. You have that kind of face. That kind of face. Even her lies were getting desperate. I stood up slowly and walked to the door, my hand hovering over the handle. Margaret? I called through the wood. Can I ask you something? A pause. Of course, sweetheart. There it was again, another endearment she had no right to use. How long have you lived in Seattle? Oh, I moved here in 1995. Right after. Her voice trailed off. I did the math quickly in my head. 1995 was the year after I was born. The year after she supposedly died in a car crash. Right after what? I pressed. After my divorce, she finished weakly. Fresh start, you know? I opened the door slowly. She stood in the hallway, and seeing her face to face was like looking into a funhouse mirror of my future. She was probably in her late 40s, with the same stubborn cowlick I'd been battling my entire life and the same habit of tucking her hair behind her left ear when nervous. She was doing it right now. Margaret Sullivan, I said, testing the name. Is that your real name? Her face went pale. Why would you ask that? Because I've been looking at the photos in your room. I watched her expression crumble in real time. The photos of me as a child. With you. She leaned against the doorframe like she needed the support. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, you weren't supposed to see those. But I did. My voice was steadier than I felt. So now I need you to tell me the truth. Who are you really? Her hands were shaking now, the same fine tremor I got when I was terrified. My name is Margaret Sullivan now. Legally. But when you were born, I was Maggie Chen. Chen. My adoptive parents' last name. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Robert is your brother, I breathed. She nodded, tears starting to spill down her cheeks. Your uncle. And Linda. Linda was my best friend since high school. When I got pregnant with you, I was 19, broke, dating a man who disappeared the second he heard the word baby. I was going to drop out of college, give up everything. So you faked your death instead? The anger was rising in my chest now, hot and sharp. No. No, we never said I was dead. That was. She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh God. They told you I was dead, didn't they? I stared at her. Car accident. When I was 6 months old. Linda and Robert saved me from the foster system. Margaret's face went white as paper. They said they'd tell you I was young and couldn't take care of you. That it was an open adoption and maybe someday. I've been waiting 28 years for them to arrange a meeting. I thought maybe when you turned 18, or 25, or... Her voice broke completely. They said you didn't want to see me. The hallway started to spin slightly. They said you were dead. And they told me you never wanted contact. She was crying openly now. All these years, I've been following your life from a distance, hoping someday Robert would call and say you changed your mind. I booked this Airbnb rental myself when I saw your name on the reservation. I just wanted to see you in person, even if you didn't know who I was. We stood there staring at each other, two strangers connected by blood and torn apart by lies that ran deeper than either of us had imagined. My phone started buzzing insistently in my pocket. Without breaking eye contact with Margaret, I pulled it out. Mom flashed across the screen, Linda, calling at 11:47 p.m., which was completely unlike her. She and Robert were usually asleep by 10. Answer it, Margaret whispered, her eyes wide. Don't tell her. Don't tell her what? That I found my supposedly dead birth mother alive and well and living in Seattle? I swiped to answer. Hi, Mom. Emma, honey, where are you staying tonight? Linda's voice was tight, strained. I could hear Robert talking urgently in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. At an Airbnb. Why? It's almost midnight there. What's the address? We just want to make sure you're safe. I glanced at Margaret, who had gone completely rigid. She was shaking her head frantically, mouthing don't tell her. Mom, what's going on? You're scaring me. A pause. Then Robert's voice came on the line. Emma, listen to me very carefully. I need you to leave wherever you're staying right now and go to a hotel. Don't ask questions, just do it. Robert? Margaret stepped closer to the phone, her face a mixture of hope and terror. Is that Robert? I watched my uncle, because that's what he was, my uncle, not just my adoptive father, go completely silent on the other end of the line. The silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Uncle Robert, I said, testing the words. Did you hear that? I think someone wants to talk to you. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Emma, get out of there. Now. Why? I was getting angry now, the emotion burning hot in my chest. Afraid I might learn the truth? 28 years too late for that, don't you think? Margaret was crying again, reaching toward the phone. Please, let me talk to him. Please. Emma, you don't understand, Linda had taken the phone back. We were protecting you. We were protecting everyone. From what? From knowing my birth mother was alive? From knowing you're my aunt and uncle instead of strangers who rescued me? My voice was getting louder. From knowing that everything you told me about my life was a lie? There are things you don't know, Robert called from the background. Things about why she gave you up. Margaret's face changed instantly. The hope disappeared, replaced by something that looked like panic. No, she whispered. No, they promised they would never. Tell me. I held the phone between us so Margaret could hear. Tell me right now, or I swear I'll hang up and you'll never speak to me again. Linda was crying now too. Your birth father, she started, then stopped. Emma, he wasn't, the situation wasn't what Margaret told you. What do you mean? Margaret was backing away from me now, shaking her head. Don't listen to them. Please, Emma, whatever they say. He was married, Robert's voice cut through. Margaret's college professor. She was failing his class and he said he'd improve her grades if the pregnancy wasn't from some boyfriend who ran off. It was assault, Emma. And when Margaret threatened to tell the university unless he left his wife, he said he'd destroy her academic career and claimed she seduced him. The floor felt like it was tilting beneath my feet. That's not. Margaret, tell me that's not true. But Margaret's face had crumpled completely. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the hallway floor, sobbing into her hands. We thought you were better off not knowing, Linda whispered through the phone. We thought everyone was better off. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered on the hardwood floor. Margaret's sobs echoed in the hallway, but they sounded distant, like they were coming from underwater. I pressed my back against the doorframe, trying to process what Robert had just told me. Emma? Linda's tinny voice called from the phone at my feet. Emma, are you there? I picked it up slowly. The professor. What was his name? Dr. James Whitmore, Robert said quietly. He taught American literature at Ohio State. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. Whitmore Hall, I whispered. The building where I had my graduation ceremony. It's named after him. He donated $2 million to the university in 1996, Margaret said from the floor, her voice thick with tears. Blood money. A year after I withdrew from school. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture so ugly I wanted to tear it apart. You were going to expose him. Margaret nodded, wiping her face with trembling hands. I had evidence. Other students came forward after they heard about my situation. There was going to be an investigation. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. But then I found out I was pregnant with you. And he threatened you. He said if I pursued charges or spoke to the media, he'd claim I was an unstable student who'd seduced him for better grades. His word against mine, and he had tenure, connections, money. Her voice cracked. He said he'd make sure I never graduated from any university, never got a decent job. That I'd raise my child in poverty while he continued his perfect life. I slid down the wall until I was sitting across from her in the narrow hallway. So you ran instead. I panicked. I called Robert, crying, told him everything. He and Linda drove up from Columbus that same night. Margaret's hands were shaking as she spoke. They said they'd been trying to have a baby for 3 years. Linda couldn't carry to term. And I couldn't see a way to keep you and survive what he was threatening to do to us. But you didn't disappear completely, I said, thinking of all those photos. You've been watching me my whole life. Margaret's face flushed. Robert sent pictures for the first few years. Just birthday photos, school pictures. But then they stopped responding to my letters. When I called, they said you didn't want contact. That you were happy and I should respect that. I picked up the phone. Robert and Linda were still on the line, and I could hear them whispering urgently to each other. Why did you stop? I asked. Why did you cut her off completely? A long pause. Then Linda's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it, because she started asking for visitation rights. She wanted you back. That's not true. Margaret's voice rose sharply. I never said I wanted to take her back. I just wanted to be part of her life. Maybe an aunt figure, or a family friend. Something. You hired a lawyer, Margaret, Robert said coldly. In 2003, when Emma was 9. You filed paperwork challenging the adoption. Margaret's face went white. I withdrew that petition 3 days later. I just wanted to scare you into letting me see her. You threatened our family, Linda whispered. We couldn't risk it. We couldn't risk losing her. I stared at Margaret, then at the phone, feeling like I was watching a tennis match of accusations and justifications. So you told me she was dead to make sure I'd never look for her. And you told her I didn't want contact to make sure she'd stop trying. We were protecting you, Robert said. From what? From the truth? From having more people who loved me? My voice was getting louder. You made me grieve for a mother who was alive. Do you understand how sick that is? Margaret was crying again. I never stopped loving you. Every birthday, every Christmas, I'd drive by whatever address I could find for you and just sit in my car, hoping to catch a glimpse. When social media started, I created fake profiles just to see your photos. The Facebook account. Margaret Sullivan. I've had 17 different accounts over the years, she admitted. Whenever one got too obvious, I'd create a new one. Different name, different profile picture. I have screenshots of every photo you've ever posted. The violation of it hit me like a physical blow. That's stalking. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know how it sounds. But you have to understand, it was all I had. For 28 years, those stolen glimpses were the only way I could be part of your life. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down and saw it was from an unknown number. Your Airbnb host isn't who she claims to be. Get out now. This is Dr. Whitmore. The phone fell from my hands again, and this time the screen cracked against the hardwood. Margaret saw the message before the screen went dark. Her face transformed from grief to pure terror. He's found us, she breathed. The text message felt like a bomb had gone off in the hallway. Margaret scrambled to her feet, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't process, terror, rage, something that looked almost like relief. How does he have your number? She whispered, backing toward her bedroom. How does he even know you're here? I picked up my cracked phone with shaking hands. The message was still visible through the spiderweb screen. I don't know. Then it hit me. The Airbnb booking. It goes through my email, my phone number. If he's been watching you. 30 years, Margaret said, her voice hollow. 30 goddamn years and he's still monitoring me. Through the phone speaker, I could hear Robert and Linda arguing frantically. I put them on speaker, my hands too unsteady to hold the device. Told you this would happen eventually, Robert was saying. We should have moved years ago, changed our names. Robert. I interrupted. Did you hear that? Whitmore texted me. How is that possible? Silence. Then Linda's voice, thick with dread, he has people. Private investigators, tech people. When Margaret filed those papers in 2003, he hired someone to watch all of us. To make sure none of us ever tried to expose him. Margaret let out a bitter laugh. Of course he did. James Whitmore, pillar of the academic community, can't have his reputation tarnished by inconvenient truths. She was pacing now, running her hands through her hair. Do you know what he's done with his life while I've been hiding in Seattle like a criminal? He's written 12 books. He's got an endowed chair at Harvard now. They're talking about naming the new library after him. Another text came through, this one longer. Margaret Chen, also known as Margaret Sullivan. Still playing victim after all these years? Your daughter deserves to know what kind of woman raised her. Check your email. My blood turned to ice. He knows about the name change. He knows everything. Margaret was already rushing to a laptop on her kitchen table, her fingers flying over the keys. He sent something, she said, her voice getting higher. Oh God, Emma, don't look. Please don't. But I was already moving toward the screen. What I saw made my knees buckle. It was a police report from 1994, but not about assault. It was about theft. Margaret Chen, arrested for stealing $3,000 from her work-study job in the university's financial aid office. The charges had been dropped, but the details were all there, security footage, witness statements, evidence that she'd been skimming money from student accounts for months. That's not. I never. Margaret's voice was barely audible. He fabricated this, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure. The document looked official, complete with case numbers and officer signatures. The money was for you, Margaret whispered, tears streaming down her face. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I had no savings, no way to pay for medical bills or baby supplies. I took money from accounts of students who'd already graduated, thinking I could pay it back before anyone noticed. The room seemed to tilt. So it's real. I was 19 and terrified. Margaret's voice cracked. I was going to pay it all back as soon as I figured out how. But then Whitmore found out he had connections in the financial aid office. He said if I dropped the assault allegations, he'd make sure the theft charges disappeared too. Robert's voice came through the phone speaker, flat and emotionless. You never told us about the money, Margaret. Because I was ashamed. Because I knew how it would look. She turned to me, desperation written across her features. Emma, you have to believe me. I was desperate, making terrible choices, but everything I did was because I was trying to protect you. Another email notification chimed. This time it was sent to all of us. I could see Robert and Linda had been copied, along with what looked like dozens of other addresses. The subject line read, The Truth About Margaret Chen/Sullivan. Margaret's laptop screen filled with a comprehensive dossier. Not just the police report, but bank records showing the stolen money, academic records showing her failing grades in Whitmore's class, and most damning of all, a series of emails from 2003 where she demanded $50,000 from Robert and Linda in exchange for dropping her custody petition. Extortion, I breathed, reading the messages. You tried to blackmail my parents. It wasn't blackmail. Margaret was sobbing now. I just needed money for legal fees, to fight for visitation rights. I thought if they understood how serious I was. You threatened to take me away unless they paid you. I was desperate. I hadn't seen you in 3 years, and they kept saying you didn't want to meet me, but I knew that couldn't be true. You were just a child. The final document in Whitmore's email was a psychological evaluation from 2004, stating that Margaret Sullivan showed signs of delusional thinking, obsessive behavior, and potential danger to herself and others. He had me committed, Margaret whispered, staring at the screen. For 72 hours, after I sent those emails to your parents. Said I was having a psychological break, that I was stalking your family. My phone rang. This time the caller ID showed Dr. James Whitmore. Against every instinct screaming at me not to, I answered. Emma, his voice was warm, grandfatherly. I'm so sorry you had to discover the truth this way. Your parents called me when they realized where you were staying. They were worried about your safety. Dr. Whitmore. His name felt like poison in my mouth. How thoughtful of you to reach out after 30 years of silence. A pause. I understand you're angry, Emma. But you need to understand that everything your parents and I did was to protect you from a very unstable woman. Margaret was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, hang up, but I couldn't move. I was transfixed by the calm authority in his voice, the same tone that had probably convinced university administrators, police officers, and judges for 3 decades. Protect me from what, exactly? From knowing my birth mother was alive? From knowing your birth mother was a thief and an extortionist who spent 28 years stalking you and your family. His voice carried the practiced patience of someone used to explaining complex concepts to students. The police report you just saw is only the beginning, Emma. Margaret has been arrested 4 times since 1995, identity theft, credit card fraud, harassment. She's been institutionalized twice. I looked at Margaret, who had gone completely white. Is that true? She opened and closed her mouth several times before managing to speak. The identity theft was. I used fake names to get apartments when landlords ran background checks. The credit card thing was a misunderstanding with a roommate. And the harassment charge was just for trying to contact you through your high school guidance counselor. You contacted my school? The violation of it made my skin crawl. I sent one letter. When you turned 18, I thought maybe the rules would be different, that you'd be allowed to make your own decisions about contact. Whitmore's voice cut through our conversation like a blade. Emma, she's been escalating for years. The fake social media accounts, the drive-bys of your home, the detailed files she keeps about your daily routine. Your parents have been working with law enforcement to document everything. Working with you mean, I said, my anger building. Because you're also concerned about justice and truth. I'm concerned about a young woman who's being manipulated by someone with a documented history of mental illness and criminal behavior. His tone never wavered, never lost that professorial calm. Margaret Chen destroyed her own life with poor choices, and now she's trying to destroy yours. Margaret grabbed my arm. Emma, please. Ask him about the other students. Ask him why he donated $2 million to Ohio State the year after I left. Ask him why he moved to Harvard so suddenly. Dr. Whitmore, I said into the phone. Margaret mentioned other students who came forward. What happened to them? Another pause, longer this time. Troubled young women often create elaborate fantasies to explain their academic failures. It's more common than you might think. That's not an answer. Sarah Mitchell, transferred to community college after her grades dropped, Margaret said urgently. Jennifer Walsh dropped out entirely and moved back to her parents' farm in Kentucky. Lisa Park tried to file a Title IX complaint but withdrew it 3 weeks later. I have their names, Emma. I've been keeping track for 30 years. Keeping track, Whitmore repeated, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Do you see what I mean about obsessive behavior? She's created an entire conspiracy theory to avoid taking responsibility for her own actions. My cracked phone screen lit up with another notification. Someone had sent me a friend request on Facebook, Sarah Mitchell, with a profile picture showing a woman about Margaret's age standing in front of a small law office. Dr. Whitmore, I said slowly, if Margaret is so delusional and dangerous, why are you calling me at midnight to discuss her? Why not let the police handle it? The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, because despite everything, I care about what happens to you, Emma. You're an innocent victim in all of this. How do you even know anything about me? How did you get my number? Your parents and I have stayed in touch over the years. We've all been watching out for you, making sure Margaret never got too close. Margaret was typing frantically on her laptop. She turned the screen toward me, showing a news article from the Harvard Crimson dated 6 months ago. Professor James Whitmore announces retirement amid internal investigation. The blood drained from my face as I read the first paragraph. 3 female graduate students had filed formal complaints alleging inappropriate conduct spanning the past 5 years. The investigation was ongoing, but Whitmore had chosen to retire rather than participate in the proceedings. Still happening, I whispered. What's still happening? Whitmore's voice had lost some of its warmth. You're still doing it. 30 years later, and you're still preying on students. My voice was getting stronger, louder. How many others, Dr. Whitmore? How many students have you silenced with threats and money and fake police reports? Emma, you're clearly being influenced by Margaret's delusions. The Harvard investigation is real. I'm looking at the article right now. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. When Whitmore spoke again, his voice had changed completely, cold, sharp, stripped of all pretense. You have no idea what you're getting involved in, Emma. Your comfortable little life in Chicago, your marketing job, your nice apartment on Halsted Street, apartment 3B, isn't it? All of that can disappear very quickly if you start believing the wrong stories. The threat was unmistakable. Margaret grabbed the phone from my hands. James, she said, her voice steadier than it had been all night. It's over. It's been over for a long time, you just refused to accept it. Margaret. His voice turned almost gentle. You know what happens when you try to tell stories nobody believes. I'm not 19 anymore, she replied. And I'm not alone. She hung up and immediately started dialing 911. While Margaret spoke to the 911 operator, I accepted Sarah Mitchell's Facebook friend request with shaking fingers. Within seconds, a message appeared. You're Margaret's daughter. I saw your name in the news alerts I set up years ago for anything related to Whitmore. Are you safe? I typed back quickly, I don't know. I'm with Margaret now. Whitmore just threatened me. Where are you? I gave her the address, then added, what news alerts? What do you mean you saw my name? I'm a lawyer now. I've been building a case against him for 15 years, waiting for the right moment. Harvard was just the beginning, I have 7 other women ready to come forward, including Margaret. We've been looking for you. My hands trembled as I typed, looking for me why? Because you're proof. Whitmore paid $2.3 million total to make problems disappear, Margaret's situation, mine, 3 others. But he couldn't make you disappear. Every time he sees your name in a university alumni magazine or a work promotion announcement, he's reminded that his crimes had consequences. I stared at the screen. How do you know about my work promotions? Because he's been tracking you too, Emma. He has a file on you 3 inches thick. Every major life event, every address, every job. He's been waiting for the day you might start asking questions about your birth parents. Margaret finished with 911 and came back to the laptop. They're sending a unit, but they said it could be 40 minutes. Budget cuts. She looked at my phone screen. Sarah? Sarah Mitchell is messaging you? I nodded, turning the laptop so she could read the conversation. Margaret's face went through a series of emotions, surprise, hope, then something that looked like terror. He knows where we are, Emma. If Sarah's right about the tracking, he could have people watching this house right now. As if summoned by her words, we heard a car door slam outside. Margaret rushed to the front window and peered through the blinds. Black sedan. 2 men in suits at 11:30 at night. Her voice was tied with panic. That's not normal. My phone buzzed with a call from Robert. I answered immediately. Emma, listen carefully, he said without preamble. Linda and I are in the car driving to Seattle right now. We should be there by morning. But you need to get somewhere public immediately. Uncle Robert. Don't call me that, he said sharply. Not until this is over. Too many people could be listening. His voice dropped to a whisper. We never told you everything about why we moved you around so much when you were little. The 3 different elementary schools, the 2 middle schools. I felt cold spreading through my chest. What do you mean? Whitmore didn't just threaten Margaret. He threatened us too. Every few years, someone would show up at your school asking questions about your family history, or we'd get calls from researchers wanting to interview us about the adoption process. Robert's voice cracked. We kept moving you to stay ahead of it. Margaret was still watching the window. They're not getting out of the car, she whispered. Just sitting there watching the house. Sarah's messages kept coming. Emma, I need you to document everything. Photos, audio recordings, anything. The other victims and I have been waiting for corroboration of his surveillance activities. I typed back, there are men watching the house right now. Get photos if you can. License plates especially. And whatever you do, don't go anywhere alone with Margaret until this is resolved. Why not? I thought you were working together. A pause, then, we are. But Whitmore has spent 30 years convincing people that Margaret is unstable. If anything happens to you while you're with her, she'll be the first person they arrest. I looked at Margaret, who was now pacing between the window and the kitchen, muttering numbers under her breath like she was calculating something. Margaret? I called softly. What are you thinking about? She stopped pacing and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that maybe it's time to stop running. What do you mean, stop running? I asked, though something in Margaret's tone made my stomach clench. She was moving with sudden purpose now, pulling a cardboard box from under her kitchen table. I mean, I've spent 30 years letting him control the narrative. Letting him paint me as the crazy stalker while he builds monuments to himself with blood money. The box was full of documents, manila folders thick with papers, photographs, what looked like legal briefs. Margaret's hands were steady now as she sorted through them, no longer shaking. Sarah and the others, they'd been building their case the right way. Legal channels, proper evidence, working within the system. She pulled out a folder labeled Whitmore, financial records, in careful block letters. But I've been building something else. Margaret, the men outside, can sit there all night if they want. Her voice had changed completely. The frightened, crying woman from 20 minutes ago was gone, replaced by someone cold and focused. I'd been preparing for this conversation for 28 years. She opened the folder and spread documents across the kitchen table. Bank statements, wire transfer records, property deeds, all with James Whitmore's name highlighted in yellow. The $2.3 million Sarah mentioned? That's just what he reported to the IRS. Margaret's finger traced a line of numbers on a bank statement from 2003. The real number is closer to $7 million. Offshore accounts, shell companies, payments disguised as consulting fees. I leaned closer to look at the documents. How did you get these? 28 years is a long time to learn new skills. Her smile was sharp. Turns out when you're forced to use fake identities for everything, you get pretty good at understanding how financial records work. And when you're obsessed with someone, you learn all their patterns. My phone buzzed with another message from Sarah. Police scanner shows units being diverted to other calls. Response time now 60+ minutes. Something's wrong. Margaret, we need to leave. Now. I showed her the message. She didn't even glance at it. Emma, look at this. She pointed to a property deed dated 1996. He bought a house in your neighborhood in Chicago 3 years ago. 4 blocks from your apartment. The blood drained from my face. That's impossible. 1247 North Halstead Street. Ring any bells? It did. The gray Victorian house with a perfectly manicured garden that I walked past every day on my way to the L station. I'd always wondered who lived there because I never saw anyone coming or going, but the lawn was always immaculate. He's been watching you in person, Emma. Not just online, not just through investigators. He's been there. Margaret pulled out another folder, this one labeled Surveillance Photos each in 2019 to 2023. My hand shook as I opened it. Pictures of me leaving my apartment building. Walking to work. Having coffee with friends at the cafe on Webster Street. Grocery shopping. All taken with a telephoto lens from what had to be that house 4 blocks away. How long have you known about this? I whispered. I figured it out last year when I saw him at your company's holiday party. I stared at her. You were at my holiday party? Catering staff. Margaret Sullivan, temporary hire through an agency I've used before. She pulled out a photo of herself in a black uniform, standing behind the bar at the Hotel Chicago downtown. He was there, Emma. Talking to your boss, asking questions about your performance, your plans for advancement. The room started spinning. That's why I got promoted to the Seattle account. He's been manipulating your career for years. The promotion, this business trip, even which Airbnb you choose, I guarantee you he's had a hand in all of it. Margaret's laptop chimed with an email notification. She glanced at it and her face went white. What is it? She turned the screen toward me. The email was from Whitmore, sent to what looked like a dozen addresses. Margaret Chin Sullivan has kidnapped Emma Chen and is holding her against her will at 2847 Pine Street, Seattle. She is armed and dangerous. Immediate police response required. He's framing you, I breathed. No, Margaret said quietly, still staring at the screen. He's framing both of us. The second email had arrived 30 seconds later, this one addressed to the Seattle Police Department with my phone number attached. Help me. Margaret Sullivan is my birth mother, but she's having a psychotic break. She's threatening to hurt herself and me. Please send help to 2847 Pine Street. He sent that from my number, I said, feeling sick. He can access my phone remotely. Margaret was already moving, shoving documents back into boxes. Which means he heard everything we just discussed. He knows about Sarah, about the evidence, about what I've been collecting. Car door slammed outside. Multiple vehicles this time. Seattle police. Open the door. Margaret grabbed my arm. Emma, listen to me very carefully. In about 30 seconds, armed officers are going to break down that door. They're going to see a woman with a documented history of mental illness and criminal behavior holding the daughter she's been stalking for 28 years. But we can explain. With what? His fabricated evidence, or my boxes of documents that look exactly like the obsessive collection of a delusional stalker? Margaret's eyes were fierce. Everything I have that proves he's been watching you just makes me look more unstable. The pounding on the door grew louder. Open up now. Margaret pressed a USB drive into my palm. Sarah's contact information, copies of everything, and one more thing Whitmore doesn't know I have. What? Audio recordings from 1994. Of him threatening me, admitting to the assaults, promising to destroy my life if I ever spoke up. Her smile was grim. Hidden in my dorm room closet for 28 years. I was 19 and stupid about a lot of things, but my dad was a private investigator. He taught me to always get insurance. The front door exploded inward. The first officer through the door had his weapon drawn, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Behind him came 3 more, their boots thundering against Margaret's hardwood floors. Hands where I can see them. Both of you. I raised my hands immediately, the USB drive Margaret had given me clutched in my palm. Margaret stood perfectly still, her arms at her sides, watching the officers with an expression that looked almost calm. I'm Emma Chan, I said quickly. Someone's been impersonating me through my phone. I never sent any distress messages. The lead officer, Sergeant Rodriguez according to his name tag, kept his weapon trained on Margaret. Ma'am, we received multiple reports of a kidnapping in progress. Are you here against your will? No, I'm not. This is my birth mother. We're just talking. Birth mother who's been declared legally mentally incompetent, Rodriguez said, not lowering his gun. Margaret Sullivan, you're in violation of a restraining order filed by the Chin family in 2019. My blood turned to ice. What restraining order? Margaret's calm expression finally cracked. I never received any restraining order. Emma, I swear to you. Ma'am, step away from Ms. Chen and put your hands behind your head. As Margaret complied, I saw her mouth two words, USB drive. I palmed the small device, sliding it into the back pocket of my jeans just as another officer approached me. Ms. Chen, we need to get you checked out by paramedics. You may have been drugged or coerced. I haven't been drugged. I came here willingly for an Airbnb rental. I pulled out my cracked phone, showing them the booking confirmation. Look, everything's legitimate. Rodriguez was reading from a tablet now. According to our records, Margaret Sullivan has been institutionalized twice for threats against your family. The most recent incident was 18 months ago when she attempted to break into your apartment building in Chicago. That's impossible, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I remembered something. 18 months ago, my building's security had been upgraded after what they called an incident with an unstable individual. The management company had been deliberately vague about details. Emma, Margaret said quietly as an officer handcuffed her. Check the dates on everything they're showing you. Check the signatures. Rodriguez turned his tablet so I could see the restraining order. Filed October 15, 2019, by Robert and Linda Chen on behalf of their daughter Emma Chen. My own signature was at the bottom of the document, notarized and official. I never signed this, I whispered. I was never contacted about any restraining order. Forgery is a serious accusation, ma'am, Rodriguez said. Do you have any proof you weren't involved in filing this order? I stared at the document, my mind racing. The signature looked exactly like mine, not close, but perfect. The kind of perfect that came from someone who'd had years to practice replicating it. Sergeant Rodriguez? Another officer called from Margaret's laptop. You need to see this. There's an email thread here between the suspect and someone called E.Chin.Personal going back 3 years. Pretty explicit threats. Margaret's eyes went wide. I never sent any emails to Emma. I only watched her social media accounts. But as the officer read excerpts aloud, I heard my own words coming back at me, or words that sounded like things I might write. Casual phrases I used, references to my daily routine, even complaints about my job that I'd posted on Facebook. Woven together into emails I'd never sent, responding to increasingly desperate messages from Margaret that painted her as an obsessive stalker and me as a victim trying to be polite. The last email is from 2 weeks ago, the officer continued. Margaret, I told you repeatedly to stop contacting me. If you don't leave me alone, I'll have no choice but to involve the police again. Again? I looked at Rodriguez. What does he mean, again? Ms. Chen, you filed a harassment report with Chicago PD in December 2022. Are you saying you don't remember that? The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Everything Margaret had shown me, everything Sarah had told me, none of it mattered if there was an entire paper trail showing that I'd been actively trying to keep Margaret away from me for years. I want to call my parents, I said. My adoptive parents, Robert and Linda Chen. They're the ones who alerted us to the situation tonight, Rodriguez said. They should be here within the hour. Margaret was being led toward the door, but she turned back to look at me one last time. Emma, the recordings I mentioned. 1994, ask Sarah about the Whitmore Foundation's first donation to Ohio State. Ask her why it was exactly $847,000. Ma'am, stop talking, the officer escorting her said firmly. $847,000, Margaret called out as they pushed her through the doorway. The exact amount of my father's life insurance policy that I inherited when he died in 1995. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving me alone with the remaining officers and the wreckage of everything I thought I understood about my life. Rodriguez was watching me carefully. Ms. Chen, is there anything else you need to tell us about tonight? Any detail that might be important? I thought about the USB drive in my pocket, about Sarah Mitchell's messages, about the surveillance photos of my own life. About a house 4 blocks from my apartment and a man who'd been manipulating my career for years. No, I lied. Nothing else. The police left at 3:17 a.m., taking their reports and evidence bags with them. I sat alone in Margaret's living room, surrounded by the aftermath of their search, overturned cushions, scattered papers, the lingering smell of coffee grounds they'd dumped out looking for hidden compartments. The USB drive felt like it was radiating heat from my back pocket. Robert and Linda arrived 20 minutes later, looking haggard and older than I'd ever seen them. Linda immediately pulled me into a crushing hug that smelled like her familiar lavender perfume and the stale air of a car that had been driven through the night. Thank God you're safe, she whispered against my hair. When we got the call that Margaret had taken you. She didn't take me anywhere, I said, pulling away from the hug. I booked this Airbnb. She lives here. Robert's face was grim as he surveyed the ransacked room. Emma, there are things about Margaret's condition that you don't understand. The mental health issues, the obsessive behaviors. The restraining order I supposedly filed but have no memory of? Linda and Robert exchanged a look that lasted too long. Sweetheart, you were going through a difficult time in 2019, Linda said carefully. The promotion stress, that breakup with David. When the harassment escalated, we thought it was best to handle the legal aspects ourselves so you wouldn't have to deal with the trauma. Handle the legal aspects like forging my signature? We had power of attorney for medical decisions, Robert said. The lawyer said it extended to protective orders in cases involving mental health threats. That was a lie. I'd worked in corporate law long enough to know that power of attorney didn't work that way. But I also knew that confronting them about it right now would shut down any chance I had of getting real answers. My phone buzzed. Sarah Mitchell had sent another message. Are you okay? I saw the police report on the scanner. Margaret's being held at King County Jail pending psychiatric evaluation. I typed back carefully, I'm with my adoptive parents now. Can we talk tomorrow? Yes. But Emma, be very careful who you trust. Whitmore has had 30 years to place people in positions where they can help him. That includes law enforcement, legal professionals, even medical staff. I glanced up at Robert, who was examining Margaret's laptop with the focused attention he usually reserved for his accounting work. Linda was gathering scattered papers from the floor, organizing them into neat stacks with the same compulsive tidiness she'd shown my entire childhood. Normal behaviors. The same people who'd raised me, loved me, taught me to ride a bike, and helped me with homework. But now every familiar gesture felt potentially sinister. Robert? I said casually. That lawyer you mentioned, the one who handled the restraining order. What was his name? Another pause before he answered. James Morrison. Morrison and Associates. Small firm that specializes in family protection cases. I committed the name to memory, already planning to Google it as soon as I was alone. Something about the way Robert said it, too smooth, like he'd practiced the answer. We should get you to a hotel, Linda said, still organizing papers. This place gives me the creeps. All these photos of you everywhere, it's like a shrine. She was right about the photos. In the chaos of Margaret's arrest, I'd almost forgotten about them. They were still there, scattered across every surface, chronicling my entire life from the perspective of someone watching from the shadows. Actually, I said, I'd like to stay here tonight. This is the Airbnb I booked and paid for. And I want some time to process everything. Absolutely not, Robert said immediately. You're not staying in the home of someone who's been stalking you for 28 years. Then I'll get my own hotel room. Emma, Linda started. I'm 28 years old, I said firmly. I can decide where I want to sleep. The USB drive seemed to pulse against my hip as I stood up, Margaret's final words echoing in my head, $847,000. Her father's life insurance policy. The exact amount of Whitmore's first donation to Ohio State. What were the odds that was a coincidence? I ended up at a Holiday Inn downtown, despite Robert and Linda's protests. They wanted me to stay with them at their hotel, but I needed space to think, and to examine what Margaret had given me without their watchful eyes. The USB drive contained exactly what Margaret had promised. Audio files from 1994, tinny and distant but unmistakably clear. I plugged in my headphones and listened to James Whitmore's voice, 30 years younger but carrying the same authoritative tone I'd heard on the phone. You think anyone will believe a failing student over a tenured professor? You think your word means anything against mine? Margaret's voice, so young it made my chest ache. I have witnesses. Other girls who'll come forward. Other troubled girls who've already been discredited. Sarah Mitchell's academic probation for cheating. Jennifer Walsh's drinking problem. You're all damaged goods, Margaret. No one cares what happens to damaged goods. The recording crackled with static, then Margaret again, I'll go to the newspapers. With what proof? Your word against mine? And then what happens when the financial aid office discovers you've been stealing from student accounts? Criminal charges, expulsion, a record that follows you for life. Is that really the hill you want to die on? I paused the recording, my hands shaking. The theft had come first. Whitmore hadn't fabricated evidence. He'd discovered Margaret's desperate crime and used it as leverage. She'd been stealing money to prepare for a baby she couldn't afford, and he'd caught her. The next file was shorter, recorded what sounded like weeks later. I'll make you a deal, Margaret. Disappear quietly, and I'll make sure the theft charges go away. Keep my name out of your mouth, and I'll even help you financially. Consider it child support. How much? Margaret's voice was hollow, defeated. Your father's life insurance policy was worth $847,000. I'll match it exactly. Donated to the university in your honor, of course. A scholarship fund for single mothers. The scholarship fund that still existed today. I'd looked it up on Ohio State's website, the Margaret Chin Memorial Scholarship, established in 1995 to help young women facing unexpected pregnancies complete their education. Memorial. As in, for someone who was dead. My phone rang. Linda's contact photo filled the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then Robert called. Then Linda again. Finally, a text, Emma, please call us back. We're worried about you. Instead, I called Sarah Mitchell. She answered on the second ring despite the late hour. Emma? Are you somewhere safe? Hotel downtown. Sarah, I need to ask you about the scholarship fund. The Margaret Chin Memorial Scholarship. A sharp intake of breath. You found the recordings. Whitmore paid her father's life insurance amount. Exactly. He turned blood money into a memorial for someone who wasn't dead. It gets worse, Sarah said quietly. I've been digging into the scholarship recipients over the past 28 years. Guess who's been on the selection committee since 1995? My stomach dropped. Robert. Your adoptive father has personally chosen every girl who's received Margaret's Memorial Scholarship. Young women facing unexpected pregnancies, financial hardship, family crisis. Sarah's voice was tight with anger. He's been using it as a hunting ground, passing along vulnerable students' information to Whitmore. The hotel room felt like it was closing in around me. That's impossible. Robert would never. Emma, 3 of the scholarship recipients filed complaints against Whitmore over the years. All 3 suddenly withdrew their applications and transferred to different schools. All 3 received full rides to small colleges in rural areas where they disappeared from public record. I thought about my adoptive father, the man who'd taught me to balance a checkbook and insisted on walking me to school until I was 12. The same man who'd somehow failed to mention he was my birth mother's brother, or that he'd been helping James Whitmore identify victims for 3 decades. There's more, Sarah continued. I pulled the incorporation documents for Morrison and Associates, the law firm that supposedly handled your restraining order. James Morrison is a fake identity. The real owner of the firm is Robert Chin. The USB drive slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the hotel room floor. My entire support system, my adoptive parents, the legal protections I thought I'd filed, even the university scholarship system, had been controlled by the same people who'd orchestrated my separation from Margaret. Sarah, how do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're not part of this too? Because, she said, I'm one of the scholarship recipients who got away. Margaret Chin Memorial Scholarship, class of 2001. And tomorrow morning, I'm filing a federal RICO case that's going to bring down 30 years of systematic abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. My hotel room door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in with a key card. Sarah, I whispered, someone's here. The door handle stopped rattling, followed by urgent whispers in the hallway. I crept toward the peephole, still clutching my phone with Sarah on the line. "Emma," she whispered through the speaker. "What's happening?" I peered through the peephole and my blood turned to ice. Robert stood in the hallway with a tall man in an expensive suit, someone I didn't recognize but whose presence radiated the same quiet authority as Whitmore's voice on those recordings. "They found me," I breathed into the phone. "Robert's here with someone else. Get out. Now. Fire exit, backstairs, whatever you have to do." A soft knock echoed through the room. "Emma?" Robert's voice was gentle, concerned. "Sweetheart, the front desk said you were having trouble with your keycard. We brought a maintenance guy to help." Maintenance guy. At 4:30 a.m. In a $1,000 suit. I grabbed my laptop and the USB drive, shoving them into my purse along with the scattered contents of Margaret's evidence folders. The bathroom window was too small, and I was on the 7th floor anyway. The only exit was past Robert and his companion. "Emma, we know you're scared," Robert continued. "But Margaret has filled your head with dangerous ideas. We need to get you somewhere safe where we can sort through what's real and what's fabrication. Somewhere safe. Like the psychiatric facility where Margaret was probably being held right now, being evaluated by doctors who might be on Whitmore's payroll. Sarah, the RICO case she mentioned. When exactly are you filing it?" 9 a.m. Pacific time. Federal courthouse in Seattle. But Emma, if they get to you first. How many victims total? Counting Margaret and the scholarship recipients I can prove? 14 women over 30 years. But I suspect there are more who never came forward. 14. The number hit me like a physical blow. 14 lives disrupted, silenced, discredited. 14 women who tried to speak truth to power and been systematically destroyed for it. The door handle rattled again, more aggressively this time. "Emma, we're coming in," the stranger's voice called out. "Dr. Harrison from Seattle General Hospital. Your parents called us about your mental state after the traumatic events tonight." Dr. Harrison. Another name to add to the growing list of people who'd appeared conveniently in my life at crucial moments. Just like Dr. Whitmore had appeared in my work sphere, Robert had appeared on the scholarship committee, and Morrison and Associates had appeared to handle legal documents I'd never authorized. I looked at my cracked phone screen, at Sarah's contact information, at the evidence that could potentially bring down 3 decades of systematic abuse. Then I made a decision that would have terrified me 12 hours ago but now felt like the only rational choice left. I opened the hotel room door. Robert's face flooded with relief. "Thank God. Emma, we've been so worried." "Uncle Robert," I said, watching his expression freeze at the title. "I've been listening to some very interesting recordings from 1994. Would you like to hear them?" Dr. Harrison stepped forward smoothly. "Ms. Chen, you've experienced significant psychological trauma tonight. These recordings you mention are likely part of the delusional framework that your birth mother has constructed." $847,000, I interrupted. "Margaret's father's life insurance policy. The exact amount of Whitmore's first donation to Ohio State. The same amount that's funded the Margaret Chen Memorial Scholarship for 28 years. The color drained from Robert's face. "Emma, you don't understand the full context. I understand that you've been feeding vulnerable young women to a predator for 3 decades. I understand that you forged legal documents in my name. And I understand that in exactly 4.5 hours, Sarah Mitchell is filing federal charges that are going to expose all of it." Dr. Harrison's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. "Ms. Chen, I'm going to need you to come with us for a psychiatric evaluation. For your own safety." "Actually," I said, stepping backward into the room, "I think I'll wait right here for the FBI." That's when Robert lunged forward, and I realized that some family reunions were worth destroying 2 families to avoid. I slammed the hotel room door and threw the deadbolt just as Robert's shoulder hit the other side. The impact rattled the entire frame, but it held. "For now. Emma, open this door." Robert's voice had lost all pretense of fatherly concern. "You have no idea what you're getting into." I pressed my back against the door, my heart hammering as I called 911 with shaking fingers. The operator's calm voice felt surreal against the chaos erupting around me. 911, what's your emergency?" "I'm being held against my will at the Holiday Inn downtown, room 714. 2 men are trying to force me to go with them for a fake psychiatric evaluation." Through the door, I could hear Dr. Harrison speaking in low, urgent tones. I caught fragments: family emergency, psychiatric break, dangerous to herself and others. "Ma'am, officers are en route," the 911 operator said. "Can you get to a secure location in the room?" "I'm in the bathroom now," I lied, moving toward the window instead. 7 floors down, but there was a fire escape ladder visible on the adjacent building. Maybe if I screamed loud enough, someone would call additional help. The door handle rattled violently. Then Robert's voice again, but different now, resigned, almost sad. "Emma, I need you to understand something. Everything we did was to protect you from becoming another statistic. Margaret isn't the only one Whitmore destroyed. There were others before her, others after. We thought if we could just keep you away from all of it. By lying to me my entire life?" I shouted back. "By giving you a normal childhood. By making sure you never had to carry the weight of what your conception really was." The words hit like a physical slap. I'd known, intellectually, what Whitmore had done to Margaret. But hearing Robert say it out loud, acknowledging that my very existence was the result of violence, made something crack inside my chest. Dr. Harrison's voice cut through my spiral. "Mr. Chen, we need to move quickly. Hotel security will be here soon, and if the police arrive before we can contain this situation." Contain this situation. Like I was a chemical spill instead of a human being. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Filing moved up to 6 a.m. Whitmore's people are trying to get an injunction." "Where are you?" I typed back quickly. "Holiday in downtown room 714. They found me. Going to try fire escape. Don't. Building security cameras will show you fleeing, makes you look unstable. Stay put, document everything." She was right. If I ran now, it would only support their narrative that I was having a psychiatric breakdown. But staying meant trusting that the police would arrive before Robert and Dr. Harrison found another way in. A soft electronic beep came from the door. Someone was overriding the keycard system. Hotel security, a new voice called. We need to do a welfare check. Of course. They'd convinced hotel staff that I was a danger to myself. I grabbed my phone and started recording as the door opened, revealing Robert, Dr. Harrison, and a hotel security guard who looked deeply uncomfortable with whatever story he'd been told. There she is, Dr. Harrison said with practiced concern. Emma, your family is very worried about you. For the record, I said clearly into my phone's camera, I am Emma Chan, I am not suicidal, I am not having a psychiatric emergency, and these men are trying to forcibly remove me from my hotel room under false pretenses. The security guard's expression shifted. Ma'am, they said you were threatening to hurt yourself. I've done nothing but make phone calls and pack my belongings. You can check your own security footage. Dr. Harrison stepped forward with a clipboard. I have commitment paperwork here signed by her next of kin. Ms. Chen is clearly in crisis and needs immediate medical intervention. Next of kin? I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Robert, want to explain to everyone here exactly what our relationship is? Because I'm betting that commitment paperwork doesn't mention that you're my uncle, or that you've been helping cover up crimes for 30 years. Robert's face crumpled. Emma, please. If this comes out, if Sarah files that case, it won't just destroy Whitmore. It'll destroy everyone. Linda, me, the families of the other scholarship recipients. Margaret will go to prison for the financial crimes, even if she was a victim too. Maybe some things deserve to be destroyed, I said, still recording. That's when I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, sirens in the distance, getting closer. Dr. Harrison heard them too. His practiced calm finally cracked. Robert, we're out of time. My adoptive father looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not love, not anger, but something that looked almost like fear. Emma, he said quietly, there's one more thing you need to know about Sarah Mitchell's case. About why we really tried to keep you away from all this. The sirens were getting louder, maybe 2 minutes away. What? I whispered. You're not just a victim, sweetheart. According to federal law, you're also evidence. And evidence has a way of disappearing when cases get too complicated. The police arrived like a small army, 4 officers led by Sergeant Rodriguez, who looked less than thrilled to see me again. Behind them came 2 FBI agents who'd apparently been monitoring Sarah Mitchell's case and had intercepted the 911 call. Ms. Chen, Agent Patricia Wells said, flashing her badge. We understand you have evidence related to an ongoing federal investigation. I handed her the USB drive with Margaret's recordings, my hands finally steady for the first time all night. 30 years of it. And I want to make a formal statement about conspiracy, fraud, and witness intimidation. Dr. Harrison tried to slip away during the confusion, but Agent Wells' partner caught him at the elevator. The commitment papers he'd been carrying turned out to be blank forms with forged signatures, including one from a psychiatrist who'd been dead for 6 months. Robert sat heavily on the hotel room's single chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Emma, I need you to understand. When Margaret first came to us pregnant and terrified, we thought we were saving everyone. You, her, even Whitmore's future victims. By covering up sexual assault? By making sure a 19-year-old girl and her baby had stable lives instead of being destroyed by a man with unlimited resources. His voice cracked. But then Whitmore kept escalating. More victims, more threats, more money changing hands. And by the time we realized how big it had gotten, we were already complicit. Agent Wells was taking notes rapidly. Mr. Chen, you're admitting to knowledge of ongoing criminal activity? I'm admitting to 30 years of cowardice, Robert said quietly. The federal case moved faster than I'd ever imagined possible. By noon, Whitmore was in custody in Boston. Dr. Harrison, whose real name was Michael Torres, a disgraced physician with ties to 3 other cover-up operations, was charged with attempted kidnapping and fraud. The house 4 blocks from my Chicago apartment yielded surveillance equipment worth over $200,000 and detailed files on not just me, but 7 other children of Whitmore's victims. Margaret was released from King County Jail at 2 p.m., all charges dropped. I was waiting in the lobby when she walked out, still wearing the same clothes from the night before but somehow looking more composed than she had in her own living room. Emma. She stopped a few feet away, uncertain. I wasn't sure you'd come. I brought you something. I handed her a manila envelope. Deed to the house in Chicago. Whitmore signed it over as part of his plea agreement. I thought you might want to burn it down. For the first time since I'd met her, Margaret smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. That's very tempting. But I think I'd rather sell it and donate the proceeds to Sarah's legal advocacy fund. Sarah's what? She's starting a foundation for victims of institutional abuse. Turns out prosecuting one case taught her there are dozens more out there. Margaret's expression turned serious. Emma, I need to tell you something. About the scholarship recipients, about what Robert was really doing. We sat on a bench outside the jail, and Margaret explained what the FBI had discovered. Robert hadn't just been identifying vulnerable students for Whitmore, he'd been trying to help them. Incomplete records showed he'd quietly arranged safe transfers for at least 8 scholarship recipients, moving them to schools far from Whitmore's influence. The 3 women Sarah thought had disappeared were actually living under new identities with full funding for their education and new lives. He was playing both sides, Margaret said. Giving Whitmore just enough access to keep him from getting suspicious, while secretly moving the girls he could save. That doesn't excuse the lies about you. No, it doesn't. But it explains why he looked so terrified when you mentioned the federal case. He wasn't just afraid of going to prison, he was afraid his rescue network would be exposed and the women he'd hidden would be found. 6 months later, I testified at Whitmore's sentencing hearing. By then, Sarah's foundation had identified 43 victims spanning 4 decades across 6 universities. The Whitmore Foundation's donations, which had reached nearly $30 million, were seized and redistributed to survivor services. Margaret and I have coffee every Sunday now, slowly building a relationship based on truth instead of surveillance and secrets. She's teaching me about my biological father, not Whitmore, but the man she was dating before the assault, who never knew about the pregnancy because she was too afraid to tell anyone the timeline. Robert and Linda pleaded guilty to fraud and conspiracy charges but received suspended sentences in exchange for their cooperation. Linda sends birthday cards that I don't respond to. Robert's testimony helped convict 14 accomplices across the academic and legal systems. The Margaret Chin Memorial Scholarship was renamed the Survivor Advocacy Education Fund. It's still active, but now it's run by actual survivors and provides support for speaking truth to power instead of staying silent. As for me, I found my baby photos in a stranger's house across the country, and it led me to uncover that my entire life had been shaped by other people's decisions about what I could handle knowing. Turns out I can handle a lot more truth than anyone gave me credit for.